The studio was silent. For once, Jamie Dornan, the charming, composed actor the world adored, wasn't smiling. He sat across from the interviewer in Belfast, eyes glistening, voice trembling. The host had simply asked about his family, a question Jamie had answered 1,000 times before. But this time, something was different. He hesitated for a long moment before finally whispering, "My sister Liesa. She's not doing very well these days." The audience fell quiet. Even the interviewer seemed unsure what to say next. Jamie took a deep breath, his gaze distant, as though he was somewhere far away, perhaps back home, beside the woman who had once been his greatest protector. "She's older now," he continued softly. "And she's been struggling with a few illnesses that come with age. Some of them, we can't really fix." His voice cracked slightly on the last word. For years, the public had known Jamie Dornan as the polished star of 50 Shades of Grey, the face of luxury campaigns, and one of Hollywood's most private figures. Few knew that behind the fame, there was a man deeply rooted in family, shaped by love, loss, and the quiet strength of the people who raised him. Among them, none had influenced him more than his sister Liesa. "She's my hero," Jamie once said in an older interview, smiling fondly. "When I was a kid, she was my world. She made me feel like I could do anything." Liesa Dornan, his eldest sister, had always been the gentle soul in their family, creative, compassionate, endlessly patient. Long before Jamie found fame, Liesa was the one who encouraged him to chase his dreams. She bought him his first guitar. She was the first person who believed he could act. But as the years went by, time began to take its toll. Liesa, now in her late 60s, has been quietly battling several age-related illnesses, heart issues, arthritis, and the cruel fog of memory loss. Jamie revealed this painful truth for the first time on air. "Some days," he said quietly, "she remembers everything, the stories, the laughter, the names. And then, there are days when she doesn't even remember mine." His voice broke. He looked down, blinking rapidly, trying to compose himself. The host gently offered to skip the question, but Jamie shook his head. "No," he said softly. "She deserves to be talked about. She deserves to be remembered." It wasn't easy for him to open up. Jamie had always guarded his private life, especially after losing his mother at a young age. That loss had shaped him, taught him to protect what was fragile and sacred, and now, watching another beloved woman fade before his eyes, he felt the same ache return. "She gave me everything," he said, his eyes glistening under the studio lights. "When my mom passed, Liesa became like a second mother to me. She's the reason I got through it all. And now, all I can do is be there for her." There was a pause. Jamie's voice grew even softer. "I visit her whenever I can. We just sit together. She holds my hand and tells me stories I've heard 100 times before. Sometimes, she forgets the ending halfway through, but it doesn't matter. I'd listen to her forever." His words touched everyone in the room. The audience, usually full of laughter and applause, sat still. Some had tears in their eyes. The interviewer placed a comforting hand over Jamie's and whispered, "She must be so proud of you." Jamie smiled faintly. "I hope so," he said. "I hope she knows I'm still that little brother who followed her everywhere." When the interview aired that night, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Fans around the world flooded social media with messages of love and support. Hashtags like #StayStrongJamie and #PrayForLiesa trended across platforms. Thousands of people shared their own stories about caring for aging parents or siblings, turning Jamie's quiet confession into a collective moment of empathy. It wasn't a scandal. It wasn't gossip. It was raw humanity. A reminder that behind fame, fortune, and flashing lights, even stars carry pain that words can barely touch. As the clip spread, Jamie's team released a short statement asking for privacy and prayers. But it was his final words in that interview that stayed in everyone's hearts. "She took care of me when I couldn't take care of myself. Now, it's my turn. She taught me how to love, and I'll never stop loving her." And with that, he looked away from the camera, his eyes full of quiet tears. The interview ended, but the image of Jamie Dornan, the movie star turned devoted brother, lingered in the minds of millions. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories aren't about fame or fortune. They're about love, loss, and the courage to say goodbye long before you're ready. The days following Jamie Dornan's emotional interview were unlike anything he had experienced before. Messages poured in from across the world, letters, emails, comments, thousands of them. People shared stories about aging parents, about siblings fading slowly into illness, about love that endures even when memory doesn't. Jamie later said he spent an entire evening reading those messages, tears streaming down his face. "I realized I wasn't alone," he said softly. "There are so many of us quietly fighting the same heartbreak, watching someone we love disappear piece by piece." A week after the interview, Jamie returned home to Northern Ireland. Reporters waited outside his family house, but he slipped past them quietly, not to avoid attention, but to protect something far more important: time. Inside, Liesa was resting by the window, a blanket around her shoulders, a book on her lap she no longer had the strength to finish. When Jamie walked in, she looked up. For a brief, miraculous moment, recognition flickered in her eyes. "Jamie," she whispered, her voice soft and fragile. He smiled through tears. "It's me, Lee. I'm home." They didn't talk much that afternoon. They didn't need to. Jamie simply sat beside her, holding her hand, tracing the same lines that had once held his when he was a frightened little boy. Later that evening, as the light dimmed, Liesa asked a question that broke him completely. "Do you still play guitar?" Jamie laughed softly, wiping his eyes. "Not as well as you, but I remember the chords." She smiled, a faint, tired smile, and murmured, "Play something for me." So he did. Sitting beside her hospital bed, Jamie picked up the old acoustic guitar that had gathered dust in the corner. He played the same lullaby Liesa used to sing to him when he was a child. His fingers trembled on the strings, but his voice stayed steady. When the song ended, she closed her eyes, whispering, "That's my boy." Jamie said later in a private statement, "That night will never leave me. It was like everything came full circle. She sang me to sleep when I was small, and now I was singing her home." Her condition worsened in the months that followed. The doctors spoke gently, explaining there were treatments to ease the pain but not to cure. Jamie faced it with quiet strength, visiting her as often as his filming schedule allowed. He didn't care about premieres or awards anymore. His world had narrowed to a hospital room filled with memories, laughter, and love. In one interview months later, he shared, "It changes you, watching someone fade like that. It teaches you what really matters. We spend our lives chasing things, but in the end, it all comes down to the people who loved us first." He spoke about the strange, bittersweet beauty of those final days. She'd forget things, faces, names, but not feelings. She'd hold my hand and say, "I know you. You're my heart." That was enough for me. Jamie began supporting several charities focused on elderly care and Alzheimer's awareness, using his platform to raise attention for families facing similar pain. But he never did it for publicity. "This isn't about headlines," he told The Guardian. "It's about dignity, giving people like my sister the comfort they deserve." After months of silence, Jamie finally shared a photo on Instagram. An old black and white image of him and Liesa as children, sitting on a garden bench, her arm around his shoulders. His caption was simple. "She gave me the courage to dream. I'll carry her love forever." That post gathered millions of reactions within hours. The comments weren't from fans, they were from people who had lived through the same heartbreak. One wrote, "Thank you for reminding us that love doesn't fade with memory. It only grows stronger." Jamie's words and his vulnerability had turned pain into connection, sorrow into solidarity. In his next public appearance, during a film premiere in London, a reporter gently asked how his sister was doing. Jamie smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "She's at peace," he said softly. "She still laughs when I tell her the old stories. That's enough for me." There was no sadness in his tone, only love, the kind that endures through time, through illness, through everything that tries to take it away. He ended that night with a sentence that has since been quoted in countless articles and tributes. "We all lose the people we love eventually. But if you loved them right, they never really leave you." And with that, Jamie Dornan, the actor, the star, the little brother, walked away from the cameras, his heart heavy yet full. The next morning, fans continued sharing his sister's story, not as a tale of tragedy, but as one of devotion. Because in the end, Tears of Truth wasn't just about loss. It was about love that doesn't fade, about family that shapes us, and about a man who reminded the world that even in heartbreak, there is grace. As one headline beautifully summed it up, Jamie Dornan didn't lose his sister. He kept her alive in every story he tells.